My sister sternly announced, "We no longer need you here. Please leave the place where you work from home. You're just living off us," with a tone that signaled she was done discussing it. My parents joined in, singing the same tune in unison. "Get out. We're tired of you and your dog always being in the way." "If that's how you feel, I'll just do what I want," I replied, my mind already plotting my next steps. Let me introduce myself. I'm Le, a 41-year-old single woman working as a freelance web designer. I can do my job from anywhere thanks to the internet and my home setup. I have my own space to work in, and I enjoy the freedom of managing my own time. Despite loving my job, my life was disrupted 5 years ago when my parents suddenly decided to visit me without notice. As soon as they walked into my house, they began to look around and soon started a conversation that hinted at major changes ahead. "This house is quite spacious," Lisa, my mother, observed, looking around. "It almost seems like we could live here too, and there's even a spare room," my father added. "It seems a waste for Lisa to live in such a big house all by herself," they declared without asking me. My parents had made up their minds in their typical manner, seeming to think moving in with me was settled without even considering what I might want. I had never planned to live with them, and I made my position very clear. "Hold on a moment. I have no desire to live with you," I said, puzzled by their assumption. "What are you even suggesting?" My father's face flushed red with anger as he sharply retorted, "You've taken over this house, claiming it was from your Uncle Michael, and you're trying to claim it as your own. There's a limit to how low you can go. I tried to set the record straight. I didn't take it over. I had a proper discussion with Uncle Michael, and he willingly transferred it to me," I explained. Despite my protests, my parents had already decided to move in. They insisted, "Our old house is falling apart, and it's no longer suitable for us to live there." Given that my mother didn't work and my father's income wasn't enough to cover major repairs, they saw no other option but to move into the house I had inherited from my Uncle Michael. Faced with their difficult situation, I couldn't just leave them homeless, so I reluctantly agreed to let them move in. Once they settled in, however, they didn't hesitate to make sarcastic remarks. "Hey, Lisa, you're already in your 40s, aren't you? Don't you have any plans of getting married?" They would taunt, always pointing out my single status. I find great satisfaction in my work and am truly content with my life, yet the people around me often express concerns about my relationship prospects. They suggest that I should follow in my sister's footsteps, who has taken a different path in life. Contrary to their expectations, my sister's married life has faced its own challenges. Nevertheless, I remain unfazed, reassuring them that I'm perfectly fine with how things are. It was during one such discussion that my mother, who had been eavesdropping, decided to butt in. "Hey, don't speak ill of your sister like that. Unlike you, she's married and even has a stable job at a company," she interrupted, defending my own choices. I replied, "I might not be married, but I am doing a respectable job too." My mother wasn't convinced and continued her criticisms. "You're always just messing around on your computer. You're probably making money through some shady means, aren't you?" she accused. Despite their doubts and criticism, I continue to live my life according to my own terms, valuing my independence and the career I've built. I quickly responded, "Shady? I'm earning my living honestly through legitimate work. There's no need to worry." My mother was not pleased with my reply and scolded me sharply. "How dare you talk back to your mother? You really are the complete opposite of your sister." This constant comparison of me to my sister by our parents was something I had become used to. While my sister worked a temporary office job, I had chosen a different path that allowed me to work from home. Although I knew our parents' generation might not fully understand the concept of remote work, it still hurt to be consistently belittled. However, one day while I was preparing dinner, instead of my perpetually idle parents, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. To my surprise, it was my sister Carol, burdened with a massive amount of luggage. "Hub, Carol, what's going on?" "It's been a while." I greeted her, taken aback by her sudden appearance. "This is Sutton, but I'll be living in this house from today," Carol replied with urgency. Baffled, I blurted out, "Living here from today? I didn't hear anything about this." Carol explained, "Didn't Mom and Dad tell you? I got divorced, so I'll be counting on you from today." Despite my initial shock, I tried to maintain a welcoming demeanor. Ignoring my startled reaction, Carol trudged upstairs and promptly claimed an empty room as her own. My parents sided with her, and I found myself powerless to object. From that moment on, my stress levels began to rise. Carol, after her divorce, had quit her job and spent her days speaking ill of me with our mother. "Hey, Mom, isn't this dress cute?" Carol would ask, showing off her latest shopping find. "Oh, yes, indeed, Carol, you're so pretty. It will definitely suit you," our mother would respond enthusiastically. Then Carol would turn to me and remark, "Do you think so too? It's totally not something Lisa would wear, right?" Unable to escape their critical gaze, I continued to live my life without reacting to their taunts. Despite the desire to retaliate, I realized that it would only play into their hands, so I remained steadfast and unresponsive to their attempts to provoke me. One fine day, I knew I had to stay strong and keep focusing on my own happiness regardless of the negativity around me. I found myself in a truly heartwarming situation when one of my closest friends became the proud owner of a litter of 4 adorable puppies. This significant event sparked a series of changes that would enrich my life tremendously. The moment I saw those precious pups, I felt a deep connection. After careful thought, I decided to adopt a little black Chihuahua from the litter. I named him Charlie. Charlie was a bundle of joy, his round eyes sparkling with mischief every time he looked at me. His tail wagged so vigorously it seemed it might just detach in his excitement. I had always dreamed of owning a Chihuahua since I was a child, and finally having Charlie by my side brought immense happiness into my life. This was particularly true because I often worked from home, and Charlie's companionship provided much-needed relief from the loneliness of my remote work days. "From today onwards, you're Charlie, okay?" "Woof," I declared to him, solidifying our bond. Caught up in my excitement, I didn't discuss my decision to bring Charlie home with my family. After all, it was my house, and I was fully responsible for all the expenses related to Charlie's care and well-being. I saw no reason for them to object. However, as soon as I introduced Charlie to my family, my parents and my sister Carol began voicing their concerns. They expressed their displeasure, upset that they hadn't been informed about my intention to get a dog. Some even mentioned their dislike for the potential odors that dogs could bring into a home. My parents and Carol were quite vocal in their disapproval. I recall, "Hey, we didn't hear anything about you getting a dog," they protested. "Dogs smell, don't they?" "I hate odors," someone added. "Lisa, how could you just bring a dog home without consulting us?" They continued to scold me. Despite their complaints, I stood my ground and firmly defended my decision. It's my house, and I decided that Charlie and I needed each other. His presence here is a source of joy, not a cause for complaints, I asserted. I was prepared to show them that Charlie's presence was a blessing, hoping they would soon see him as I did. I explained to them that Charlie wasn't some random street dog. He was a gift from a friend. I also emphasized that I was the one covering all the expenses for Charlie's care and maintenance, so they really had no grounds to complain. "What I choose to keep in my house is my business," I added firmly. "If you have any complaints, you're free to leave." Initially, their annoyance was clear. They were visibly frustrated and upset. However, within just a few hours, a miraculous change occurred. Charlie's undeniable cuteness completely won them over. They couldn't stop doting on him, playfully asking, "Aren't you cute?" Are you mommies, daddies, or are you sisters? Look over here, sweetheart." It was as though their frustration had just evaporated into thin air. My entire family had fallen head over heels in love with Charlie, and his presence managed to bring about a remarkable transformation in their attitudes. From that point on, our home was filled with constant adoration for Charlie. Thanks to him, the previous hostility directed towards me began to fade, and I was able to enjoy relatively calm and harmonious days with my family. However, as life tends to go, a disruptive event occurred one day that broke the peace we had come to enjoy. While I was out running an errand, I received an urgent call from my sister, Carol. She sounded agitated and demanded, "Come back home now." Startled by her urgent shout, I asked her what had happened. She unleashed her frustration over the phone, shouting back, "It's not what happened, it's what Charlie did. He did his business on my clothes. What if they smell?" I tried to calm her down, saying, "Oh, just wash them quickly and they'll be fine. And isn't it your fault for leaving your clothes all over the floor?" Carol retorted, "What? It's my fault. It's your poor training that's to blame." I sighed, realizing that this was just a minor hiccup. "Enough, Carol. Charlie is still a puppy, you know. If you take him out for a walk, he won't do his business at home. You said you were excited to walk Charlie today, didn't you? Did you actually take him?" I had originally planned to take Charlie for a walk later in the day, but I didn't realize this decision would trigger a series of events that would throw my family into chaos. The core issue was that I hadn't fully trained Charlie, our beloved dog, and the consequences of this oversight were about to unravel. When I returned home, I walked into a home filled with tension. My sister, Carol, clearly furious, confronted me immediately. Her anger was evident, and it was clear she had already briefed our parents about the mishap as they too glared at me. Standing amid Carol's now soiled clothes, scattered across the floor, Carol distraughtly threw the soiled garments at me in a fit of frustration. "I'm going to charge you for the cleaning costs," she declared angrily. "Why should I pay?" I retorted. "It's because you didn't take him for a walk and left your clothes all over the floor." My parents quickly joined in, urging me to take responsibility. "Lisa, shouldn't you at least apologize to Carol?" they suggested. "All of this happened because of that Charlie you brought home." As the accusations continued, I couldn't help but defend Charlie. "Can't we give Charlie some slack? Puppies are like babies. They make mistakes sometimes." But my family seemed determined to blame me and Charlie. This situation only happened because of this stupid dog. My sister snapped again. "Lisa, you made the right choice by not getting married. If you became a mother, I doubt you'd raise a decent child." Her comments grew harsher and my frustration mounted. "How dare you say something like that?" I exclaimed. "If you had taken him for walks properly and kept the house tidy, none of this would have happened." Finally, my sister reached her limit. She pointed at me and declared, "I can't take this anymore." The situation had escalated beyond simple pet mishaps to personal attacks, revealing deeper family tensions. Despite the hostility, I knew it was essential to remain calm and address each issue thoughtfully, prioritizing Charlie's training and our family's need for better communication and understanding. "I don't need you or this dumb dog. Get out of this house." The words struck me like a ton of bricks. "What?" I stammered in disbelief. "Didn't you hear me?" I said, "Get out. We don't need a home-wrecking freeloader here." My sister continued harshly. Her accusation cut deeply, especially since she knew all too well that I was currently without a job. I was stunned. Who did they think was covering the household expenses? It was me. As I stood there bewildered by my sister's outrageous claims, even my parents joined in supporting her view. "That's right, Lisa. Leave this house. Your presence only makes us feel worse," they echoed. I had reached my breaking point. "You're all jinxes. Just get out," they shouted together. their voices echoing off the walls. "That's it. I've reached my limit." I finally burst out. "If this is how it's going to be, just wait." With that declaration, I decided to take control of the situation. I quickly packed my belongings and left the house with Charlie wrapped in a towel. As I walked away, thoughts of revenge flickered through my mind, but I knew this saga was far from over. A few days later, as expected, my sister reached out to me in a panic. "Lisa, help! What happened to the house all of a sudden?" she asked, her voice filled with anxiety and desperation. Curious about this new twist in our ongoing family drama, I inquired, "What happened? Why do we suddenly have to leave?" "We were told to leave by the end of this month," she replied, her voice trembling with stress. The realization hit me hard, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was the universe's way of teaching my family a lesson about compassion and understanding. What's the problem here? Why do we suddenly have to leave? Carol's voice quivered as she struggled to grasp the situation. "I've made the decision to sell the house," I told her firmly. I stated it calmly, and Carol froze, disbelief clear in her trembling voice. "What do you mean you've decided to sell it? You don't have the authority," she stammered. "A month ago, the house officially became mine, a fact I had kept to myself until now. Yes, I received the house from Uncle Michael, and the title is in my name," I revealed, causing Carol to react with shock. "You're kidding, right?" Her skepticism was evident. "Even if the title was transferred to you by Uncle Michael, you can't just sell it like that," she argued. "I understand your concern," I reassured her, "but right after you told me to leave, I consulted with Uncle Michael. He made it clear that the house is mine now, Lisa. He told me to do what I want and suggested I get away from the family as soon as possible." Carol was taken aback, struggling to process this unexpected revelation. "What? No way," she muttered. As our conversation continued, I suspected my parents might be listening in through the phone speaker. Soon enough, they began to voice their objections. "Hey, Lisa, cut it out. We have no other place to live if we leave the house," they interjected, trying to appeal to my sense of family loyalty. "That's right, Lisa. It's unthinkable to do this to your own family. If you're a good daughter, show some respect to your parents," they added with a quiet but firm tone. I responded, "Respect? What are you talking about? You've always looked down on me compared to Carol. Who do you think has been supporting your life for the past few years? You all had nowhere to live, so I reluctantly let you stay with me." My parents were momentarily silenced by my strong response. Without waiting for their reply, I contemplated the implications of my decision, ready to enforce the boundaries that were long overdue. "Who treated me and Charlie like nuisances and kicked us out? It was you, wasn't it? Trying to drive out the original resident is shameless." My father responded with a voice full of plea. "Please, Lisa, help us. We're sorry." But I had had enough. "I don't care. Fend for yourselves," I said resolutely. With that, I abruptly ended the call and blocked all my family members' contacts. Charlie, my loyal companion, looked up at me with a worried expression. I held him close and whispered, "I'm sorry, Charlie, for shouting. It's all right now. I will protect you." I felt relieved that I had rescued Charlie from a family that had mistreated him. In the days that followed, I learned that my parents and sister had been forced to leave the house at the last minute, despite their desperate attempts to cling to it. My father's meager income and my unemployed mother and sister made it impossible for them to maintain a decent life. Rumors circulated that my sister was constantly pressured by my parents to find a job, and their family relationships deteriorated further each day. While I had no interest in their living conditions, it was clear that their standard of living had plummeted since my departure. It was a classic case of reaping what they had sown, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. Meanwhile, I enjoyed a fulfilling life in my new pet-friendly apartment, free to work on my terms without anyone complaining. All my earnings were solely for myself and Charlie. I was genuinely content with my life. "Charlie, let's go to the dog park today," I said with a smile. Charlie seemed livelier, perhaps because that noisy family was no longer a part of our lives. From that day forward, I was determined to protect Charlie for the rest of our lives and lead a peaceful and happy existence.
Marcus tossed his expensive watch onto the kitchen counter, sneering. "I'm leaving you for Ashley. The house is mine, so don't even ask." I sipped my coffee and smiled. Check again. His smug expression faltered. "My name is Olivia, and at 35, my husband of 12 years was leaving me for a 23-year-old. But I wasn't begging him to stay." "What do you mean?" he demanded. I set my mug down. "Just suggesting you check your facts." His eyes narrowed. "Don't play games. Ashley is young, exciting, everything you're not. And this house? It's mine. Always has been." I watched him strut around, so sure of himself. "You know what your problem is, Olivia? You got boring. Ashley supports my dreams." "You mean your real estate project?" I asked. His face twitched, but he quickly recovered. "Exactly. She believes in me, unlike you. You always played it safe. Like when I questioned your land deal last year. That deal will make me millions," he snapped. I walked to our home office, and he followed. "Practical?" I mused. "Like keeping copies of all our financial records? Like hiring a private investigator?" He hesitated. "What?" I turned to face him. "Did you think I didn't know? About Ashley? The money? Her sudden promotion?" His face paled. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I opened my laptop. "Remember those bank papers you had me sign?" His confidence cracked. "Those were routine updates." I smirked. "No, they were transfer papers. You tried to move our joint assets into your account, but I signed decoys." "That's impossible," he whispered. "Did you forget? I was a financial fraud investigator before we married." He grabbed the laptop, his hands shaking. "These must be fake. They're real, just like the proof of your fraud and embezzlement." He slammed the laptop shut. "You can't prove anything." I walked to the safe, opened it, and pulled out a folder. "Would you like to see the photos first or the bank records?" "This is ridiculous." He turned toward the door. "Ashley is waiting for me." I raised an eyebrow. "She might be rethinking things. She called last week, after a talk with her boss about company policies on office relationships." His face went ashen. His perfect plan was crumbling. "What do you want?" he finally asked. I sat down, crossing my legs. "Now that's the right question. Let's talk about what happens next." Marcus realized too late he had underestimated me, and now his world was about to change in ways he never expected. The next morning, I sat across from my lawyer, Sarah, watching her review the evidence I gathered. Her office was quiet except for the occasional rustle of papers and her soft whistles of appreciation. "This is incredible, Olivia," she said, looking up from the documents. "You've built an airtight case. The financial records, the surveillance photos, the witness statements from his coworkers. It's all here." I nodded, thinking about Marcus's face when he'd slunk out of the house last night, tail between his legs. He tried calling Ashley immediately, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Apparently, the anonymous tip about her involvement in financial irregularities had already reached her supervisor. "What happened after you confronted him?" Sarah asked, organizing the papers into neat piles. He tried to backtrack, of course. Claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that Ashley meant nothing to him. I smiled, remembering his desperate attempts to regain control of the situation. Then he tried threatening me, said no one would believe me, that he'd deny everything. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "And?" I played him the recording of our conversation from last night. Turns out my phone catches audio quite clearly when it's sitting on the kitchen counter. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "We need to talk. Please, I'll do anything." I showed it to Sarah, who smirked. They always want to talk once they realize they've lost the upper hand. "What are you thinking?" I leaned back in my chair, considering my options. I want him to understand exactly what he's losing. Not just the house or the money, but everything he's built. His reputation, his career, his future. With this evidence, Sarah said, Tapping the folders, we can make that happen. The company's board will be particularly interested in these financial records. And once they start investigating, his whole house of cards will collapse. I finished. Another text from Marcus. Ashley's not answering my calls. What did you do? I smiled, thinking of the anonymous email I'd sent to Ashley's department head, detailing the suspicious timing of her promotion and certain financial transactions. Nothing explicitly incriminating, just enough to raise serious questions. Did you know, I told Sarah, that Ashley's been telling everyone at their office that Marcus was separated? That I was the bitter ex who wouldn't let go. I shook my head. She had no idea she was just another pawn in his game. Sarah started laying out documents for me to sign. The board meeting is tomorrow morning. Once they see these records, Marcus's career at the company will be over, I said quietly. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, exactly. More like vindication. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ashley. We need to talk. Marcus says you're trying to ruin everything. He says you're lying about the money. I showed Sarah the message. Should I respond? Not yet, she advised. Let them stew. They'll both be getting calls from HR soon anyway. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from Marcus's office number. I let it go to voicemail. Tell me about the house, Sarah said, moving on to another folder. You said you had the deed transferred? I nodded, pulling out the property documents. Marcus never read anything I put in front of him carefully. Too busy planning his next conquest, I suppose. Last month, I had him sign transfer papers buried in a stack of routine documents. Clever, Sarah commented, and completely legal since he signed willingly. He always underestimated me, I said softly. Thought I was just the boring wife who kept his life running smoothly. He never realized I was protecting myself all along. My phone buzzed with another message from Marcus. The board wants to see me tomorrow morning. What have you done? Sarah watched me read the message. Are you sure you want to go through with this? We can negotiate a quieter settlement. I thought about all the nights I'd spent alone while Marcus was with Ashley, all the times he dismissed my concerns about his risky financial decisions, all the years he'd taken me for granted. No, I said firmly, he needs to face the consequences of his actions. All of them. Just then, an email notification popped up on my phone from Ashley's work account. I just got called into HR. They're asking questions about my promotion. Please tell me you didn't send them anything. Marcus says you're trying to destroy us. Destroy them? I showed Sarah the email. They did that to themselves. Sarah gathered the documents into her briefcase. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Are you ready for what comes next? I thought about Marcus's face when he realized how thoroughly I documented everything. The panic in his eyes when he understood that his perfect plan was falling apart. More than ready, I replied. They never saw me coming because they never really saw me at all. Tomorrow, that changes. As I left Sarah's office, my phone lit up with messages from both Marcus and Ashley, each more desperate than the last. They were finally realizing that their actions had consequences, that the comfortable life they'd planned together was crumbling. I drove home to our house, my house now, and walked through the rooms that held so many memories. Marcus had always treated our marriage like a convenience, something he could discard when something better came along. He never understood that while he was plotting his escape, I was quietly building my fortress. Tomorrow, the board would see the evidence. Tomorrow, Marcus and Ashley would face questions they couldn't answer. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, I sat in my quiet kitchen, sipping tea and reading the increasingly frantic messages appearing on my phone. Each one showed me how deeply I'd shaken their confidence, how thoroughly I'd disrupted their plans. Please, Marcus's latest text read, "We can work this out. I'll give you anything you want." I smiled, thinking of the evidence safely stored in Sarah's office. You already have, I whispered to myself. You just didn't know it. The board meeting was everything I expected and more. I sat quietly in the back of the conference room, watching Marcus sweat through his expensive shirt as the directors reviewed the evidence. Mr. Parker, the board chairman's voice cut through the tense silence, would you care to explain these financial discrepancies? Marcus tugged at his collar, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. There's been a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Please do, the chairman replied coldly. Start with explaining why company funds were redirected to personal accounts and how Miss Thompson received a senior position despite having no qualifications. In the corner, Ashley sat pale and rigid, her youth suddenly a liability rather than an asset. She wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, especially not Marcus's pleading looks in her direction. Marcus started, then stopped. For the first time in our marriage, he was speechless. The evidence spoke for itself: unauthorized transfers, fabricated reports, and a clear pattern of financial manipulation. Every document was meticulously organized, every transaction traced to its source. Given the severity of these allegations, the chairman continued, the board has no choice but to terminate your employment effectively immediately. Ms. Thompson, the same applies to you. Ashley burst into tears. Marcus just sat there, staring at the table as his carefully constructed world crumbled around him. After the meeting, I found him sitting alone in the lobby, head in his hands. He looked up as I approached, his face a mask of defeat. Why? He asked hoarsely. Why did you do this? I didn't do this, Marcus. You did. Every choice, every lie, every betrayal, those were all yours. I just made sure you couldn't hide them anymore. He stood up, desperation in his eyes. The house, we can still work something out. I'll sign whatever you want. The house is already mine, I reminded him, and there's nothing left to work out. Olivia, please, he grabbed my arm. I've lost everything. I gently removed his hand. No, Marcus, you threw everything away. There's a difference. As if on cue, Ashley stormed past us, mascara streaking her face. You ruined everything, she shouted at Marcus. You said you had it all under control. I watched their final argument unfold in the corporate lobby, neither of them even noticing me slip away. Outside, Sarah was waiting by her car. How did it go? She asked, though her smile suggested she already knew. Exactly as expected, I replied. The board found everything they needed in those files. And Marcus, currently discovering that his young girlfriend isn't interested in an unemployed, disgraced ex-executive. Sarah laughed. What's next for you? I looked up at the bright sky, feeling lighter than I had in years. I think it's time for a vacation. The house has a beautiful view, perfect for watching sunsets and planning new beginnings. Later that evening, as I sat on my patio enjoying a glass of wine, my phone lit up with one final text from Marcus. I understand now. I'm sorry I never saw you clearly before. I didn't respond. Some revelations come too late, and some apologies matter less than the lessons learned. Instead, I watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, thinking about how sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's world. It's about rebuilding your own stronger than before. Marcus had thought he was writing the end of our story when he chose Ashley. Instead, he'd only written the end of his chapter in my life. My story was just beginning, and this time, I was the only one holding the pen. The next morning, I woke up to news that Marcus had left town, his dreams of real estate empire building shattered along with his reputation. Ashley had already updated her LinkedIn profile, carefully omitting her brief tenure at the company. As for me, I had a house with a view, a future full of possibilities, and a satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best response to betrayal isn't anger or vengeance. It's simply showing them exactly who they underestimated. I picked up my coffee and stepped out onto the patio, breathing in the fresh morning air. The garden needed attention, and I had plans for renovating the kitchen. Small changes perhaps, but they would make this place truly mine. Life has a way of teaching us the lessons we need to learn, even when they come wrapped in painful packages. Marcus had taught me that I was stronger than I knew, more capable than he'd ever given me credit for. And that perhaps was the greatest gift he'd ever given me, even if he'd never meant to. The house, my future, my life, they were all mine now, earned through careful planning and quiet strength. Sometimes the best victories are the ones no one sees coming, especially from the woman they thought they could leave behind. The crystal chandelier cast long shadows over the dining room as my father stood at the head of the table. He had perfect posture, a habit from his military days. The old grandfather clock in the corner struck 7. As you all know, he began, his voice firm, Ashworth Manor has been in our family for 5 generations. Now it's time to secure its future. I sat quietly, running my fingers over the wooden table where I'd spent so many family dinners. My brother James leaned back in our grandfather's chair, a smug smile on his face. He already knew what was coming. James will take over the estate, Dad announced. He'll manage everything, the house, the land, the investments. It's time for the next generation to lead. My mother nodded. It's the natural order of things, she said. I thought of Great Aunt Martha. 3 months ago, she had pressed a small brass key into my hand. The blue room, she had whispered. When the time comes, remember the blue room. Dad's voice pulled me back to the present. And Olivia, you'll get the guest cottage. It's a generous offer, considering you chose marine biology instead of learning estate management. James smirked. Don't worry, sis. You can still visit the main house when I'm not entertaining. The cottage. A pretty way to keep me close, but without power. I thought of the women who had built this estate, my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and Great Aunt Martha. They had shaped Ashworth Manor in ways no one seemed to remember. I see, I said calmly. My father hesitated, surprised by my reaction. Well, that's settled, he said, reaching for the transfer papers. We'll sign everything tomorrow. That night, I went to the East Wing. The blue room had been Great Aunt Martha's private study. The brass key felt warm in my hand as I unlocked the door. The room smelled of old books and history. Moonlight streamed in, shining on her desk. I traced my fingers over the bookshelves, remembering her words. This estate wasn't built by men alone, Olivia. The women of Ashworth Manor have always been its true guardians. Behind her portrait, just as she had said, I found the wall safe. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a thick envelope sealed with the family crest. James had always seen the estate as a symbol of status. He never cared about its history. He laughed at my interest in the gardens and archives. Playing house won't make you the heir, he had teased. But Great Aunt Martha had seen things differently. She had spent years preparing me for this moment. As I read through the documents, a smile formed on my lips. Tomorrow my father would learn the truth. Great Aunt Martha had created a trust 30 years ago. No major decision about the estate could be made without approval from both a male and female heir. My phone buzzed. A message from James. Don't be difficult tomorrow. The cottage really is the best option for you. I placed the papers back in the safe and locked it. Tomorrow would change everything. Before heading back, I stopped at the family graveyard and lay fresh roses on Great Aunt Martha's grave. Thank you, I whispered. I'll protect what you built. As I walked back to the manor, its lights glowing warmly in the night, I knew one thing for sure. Ashworth Manor's future wasn't my father's alone to decide, and I was ready to fight for my place in its legacy. The next morning's meeting in the estate's mahogany panel library felt like a carefully orchestrated play. Father's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, arranged his papers meticulously while James paced by the window, occasionally checking his reflection in the glass. Let's make this quick, James said, checking his watch. I have plans to meet the developers about modernizing the East Wing. I sat in Great Aunt Martha's favorite armchair, the trust documents tucked safely in my bag. My mother perched on the edge of her seat, anxiously smoothing her skirt. Now then, Mr. Peterson began. The transfer documents are straightforward. Mr. Ashworth will retain life rights to the cottage on the grounds, while the main estate transfers to James, effective immediately. Actually, I interrupted softly, there's something you should see first. I withdrew the envelope, watching my father's expression shift from annoyance to curiosity. What's this? He demanded as I handed the documents to Mr. Peterson. Great Aunt Martha's trust agreement, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Created in 1993 and registered with the family's long-standing law firm in London. Mr. Peterson's eyes widened as he read through the papers. This changes everything, he muttered. What do you mean? James snapped, striding over to peer at the documents. The estate was placed in an irrevocable trust 30 years ago. Mr. Peterson explained, his professional demeanor slipping slightly according to these terms. Any major decisions regarding Ashworth Manor require joint approval from both male and female heirs. The color drained from my father's face. That's impossible. Martha would have told me. Would you have listened? I asked quietly. You barely paid attention when she tried to discuss estate management with you. James snatched the papers from Mr. Peterson. This can't be legally binding, he sputtered. It's ridiculous. I've seen these documents before, Mr. Peterson admitted. They're quite real and quite binding. Martha Ashworth was thorough in her legal preparations. My mother finally found her voice. But what about tradition? The estate has always passed to the eldest son. That tradition, I said, was actually broken several times. Great-grandmother Elizabeth ran the estate during the war. Grandmother Rose managed all financial decisions in the 1960s. Great-aunt Martha doubled our holdings in the last 30 years. The women of this family have always been more than decorative figureheads. James threw the papers onto the desk. This is just like you, isn't it? Always having to prove something. You couldn't just be happy with the cottage. The cottage was never the point, James. This isn't about where I live. It's about preserving what generations of our family built. Something you'd understand if you'd ever bothered to learn our real history. Father slumped in his chair, looking suddenly older. Martha knew. All this time, she knew this would happen. She knew you tried to exclude me, I corrected gently, just like she was excluded until she fought her way into management. She wanted to ensure that pattern wouldn't continue. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. Given these circumstances, I suggest we adjourn to review the full implications of the trusts. Any transfer documents signed today would be invalid. James stormed out, slamming the library door hard enough to rattle the family portraits on the walls. Mother followed, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. My father remained staring at me with a mixture of anger and something that might have been respect. "You're more like Martha than I realize," he said finally. "I'll take that as a compliment," I replied, gathering my things. "When you're ready to discuss actual estate management, including preservation of the historical wings rather than modern development, I'll be in Great-aunt Martha's study. There's quite a lot in her records that we should review." As I walked through the manor's familiar halls, I felt the presence of all the strong women who'd come before me. They each faced their own battles to protect and improve this place. Now it was my turn. In the blue room, I opened the curtains wide, letting sunlight flood the space. On Martha's desk, next to her favorite fountain pen, I placed a framed photo. 4 generations of Ashworth women standing proud in front of the manor. Soon, there would be decisions to make, challenges to face. But for now, I simply sat in my great-aunt's chair, knowing I was exactly where I belonged. The estate would have its female guardian once again. 3 months after the trust revelation, Ashworth Manor hummed with a different kind of energy. The autumn leaves painted the grounds in rich golds and crimsons as I walked the perimeter with our heritage consultant, discussing restoration plans for the Victorian greenhouse. James had finally started attending management meetings, though his initial resistance had been fierce. His developer friend's grand modernization plans had been firmly shelved, replaced by historically sensitive renovations that would actually preserve the estate's value. "The original blueprints your great-aunt preserved are invaluable," the consultant remarked, examining the greenhouse's intricate ironwork. "We can restore this exactly as your great-grandmother designed it." I smiled, remembering Martha's meticulous records. She preserved everything, knowing someday it would matter. Later that afternoon, I found my father in the library, reviewing the estate's quarterly accounts. He looked up as I entered, his expression softening slightly. "The trust fund investments Martha made are performing better than expected," he said, gesturing to the papers. She really did know what she was doing. "She tried to tell you that for years," I replied, sitting across from him. "All of them did." He nodded slowly. "I've been reading through the old records. The decisions your grandmother made during the market crash of '73, they saved this place." "I never knew." "Because you never asked," I said gently. "We were always more than just daughters and sisters. We were stewards." A knock at the door interrupted us. James entered, looking uncomfortable but determined. "The Historical Society called," he said. "They want to feature the manor in their Heritage Homes publication. Apparently, they're particularly interested in the women's history here." "Great-aunt Martha would have loved that," I said, watching my brother's face. "Listen," he sighed. "I've been thinking. Maybe we could restore the East Wing Conservatory instead of building that modern extension. The original plans you found, they make more sense." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd get, and I accepted it with a nod. "I'd like that. We could make it a showcase piece for the Historical Society." Mother found us all still in the library as evening approached. She hesitated in the doorway, then straightened her shoulders. "I've been going through Martha's papers too," she admitted. "I never realized, all these years I thought tradition meant keeping things the same. But our family's real tradition was adaptation. Progress. The women of this house, they built while they preserved. I thought of Martha's last words to me, the papers will protect you, but your strength will save this place. The manor's future was securing itself in ways I hadn't expected. James was learning to value preservation over profit. Father was discovering the rich history he'd overlooked. Even Mother was beginning to see beyond the rigid roles she'd accepted without question. That night, I sat in the blue room, adding my own notes to Martha's meticulous records. The trust had given me legal standing, but the real work was in proving myself a worthy guardian of this legacy. A photo on my desk caught my eye, taken just last week. It showed 4 generations of Ashworth women, but this time it included a new face. James's daughter Emma, born 2 months after the trust revelation. She sat perched on my lap, her curious eyes already taking in the grand house that would someday be part of her heritage too. I wrote her name carefully in the family record, just as Martha had recorded mine years ago. The future of Ashworth Manor would need all its children, sons and daughters alike, to understand and protect its legacy. Outside my window, the manor's lights glowed warmly against the darkening sky. The same lights that had guided generations of Ashworth's home, now illuminating a path forward that honored both tradition and progress. Great Aunt Martha's trust had done more than protect my rights. It had forced us all to confront our prejudices, to recognize the strength that comes from embracing all of our family's capabilities. The true legacy of Ashworth Manor wasn't in its ancient stones or sprawling grounds, but in the wisdom of those who'd understood that preservation requires both change and constancy. I closed the ledger, smiling at the portrait of Martha that washed over the blue room. "We're all right," I whispered. "The manor is in good hands," and somewhere I knew my great aunt was smiling too.